This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Attorney General Eric Holder announced his plan to resign Thursday after nearly 6 years as head of the Justice Department. He'll remain in office until a successor is nominated and confirmed. Holder spoke on Thursday at the White House.
Over the last 6 years, our administration, your administration, has made historic gains in realizing the principles of the founding documents and fought to protect the most sacred of American rights, the right to vote. We have begun to realize the promise of equality for our LGBT brothers and sisters and their families. We have begun to significantly reform our criminal justice system and reconnect those who bravely serve in law enforcement with the communities that they protect. We have kept faith with our belief in the power of the greatest judicial system the world has ever known to fairly and effectively adjudicate any cases that are brought before it, including those that involve the security of the nation that we both love so dearly. We have taken steps to protect the environment and make more fair the rules by which our commercial enterprises operate. And we have held accountable those who would harm the American people either through violent means or the misuse of economic or political power.
Assessments of Eric Holder's legacy as Attorney General have been mixed. The NAACP Legal Defense Fund hailed Holder as one of the finest attorney generals in the United States history, in part for his role in transforming the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department and his leadership on voting rights. Meanwhile, the American Civil Liberties Union criticized Holder's record on national security issues. The ACLU notes during Holder's time in office, the Justice Department approved the drone killing of an American in Yemen, approved the NSA's mass surveillance programs, failed to prosecute any Bush administration officials for torture, and presided over more leaked prosecutions than all previous Justice Departments combined. Today, we host a roundtable discussion looking at Eric Holder's record and legacy. Joining us from Washington, D.C., Rob Weissman, president of Public Citizen, Leslie Prohl, Washington director of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, and Michael Eric Dyson, university professor of sociology at Georgetown University. Here in New York, Bahar Azmi is with us, legal director of the Center for Constitutional Rights. We welcome you all to Democracy Now! Let's begin in Washington, D.C. Let's go to the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. Leslie Prohl, your assessment of Eric Holder's record. And by the way, were you surprised by his announcement yesterday?
Well, I was surprised that it happened yesterday. I think there have been rumors about his impending departure for some time now, and I think he himself had said that he was going to wait until the November election. So I think we were taken a little bit off guard in terms of the actual day that it happened. But we have expected this for some time now.
So talk about his record. Talk about Eric Holder's record and your assessment of it.
Sure. I mean, we think that he will go down in the history books as one of the nation's finest and most extraordinary attorney generals. I mean, he's going to be right up there alongside Bobby Kennedy. And, you know, it's not only for his aggressive enforcement of civil rights cases, but he has shown commitment and vision and courage in the way that he has used the platform of his office to really advance the national conversation on race. And I think when his legacy is brought out, that is really what people are going to remember about him. He was unafraid to talk about race in this country, and that, I think, is what he will be remembered for most.
On Thursday, President Obama applauded Eric Holder for his work combating financial fraud.
He's helped safeguard our markets from manipulation and consumers from financial fraud. Since 2009, the Justice Department has brought more than 60 cases against financial institutions and won some of the largest settlements in history for practices related to the financial crisis, recovering $85 billion. Much of it returned to ordinary Americans who were badly hurt.
That's President Obama hailing the record of Eric Holder, who announced his resignation yesterday, though it might well be a long time before he leaves because a replacement will have to be approved. Rob Weissman of Public Citizen, your response.
Well, I think that Eric Holder's record in the area of financial fraud and holding corporate criminals accountable is really radically different than his record in the area of civil rights and voting rights. In this area, he's failed utterly. No one has been held accountable for the Wall Street crash, none of the Wall Street executives, none of the Wall Street firms, for widespread financial misdeeds that led to the worst recession we've faced in 70 years, tens of millions of people being thrown out of work, millions of people being thrown out of their homes. There was basically immunity. And in fact, when the Department of Justice under Eric Holder found evidence of large financial firms engaging in epic-level money laundering on behalf of narco-traffickers and countries the U.S. government considers to be enemies, it still decided not to criminally prosecute them on the grounds that they were too big to fail, or as it became known, too big to jail. Essentially, a decision was taken that if you were a financial institution and you become big enough and powerful enough, you are above the criminal law. And unfortunately, that too is going to be a major part of Eric Holder's legacy.
Professor Michael Eric Dyson, your assessment of the Attorney General.
Well, I agree with Attorney Prohl. I think he's one of the most extraordinary attorney generals in the history of this nation. By the time he finishes, he may be the third longest serving attorney general ever. He has weathered the storm of an enormous racial backlash against black people in power at the top. He is arguably the second most powerful black person in the history of American politics after the president himself. So this is a man who was a proxy for the president in many ways in terms of the symbolic representation of black power and the way in which, or American power in a black man, I should say, and the way in which that has been responded to by such vicious and acrimonious, if you will, articulations by people in the Senate, people who are questioning the Attorney General, by politicians who felt open season on him. And as a result of that, when we look at his record, we got to put it in the context of the abstract versus the real, the abstract versus what's achievable. In the similar vein that had Barack Obama come into office and allowed the financial institutions of America to fail, you can't overcome that headline. Nation's first black president allows the financial institutions to fail. There's nothing that we can ever do or say that would have counteracted or countervailed that particular reality and that headline. And Eric Holder, look, we're not saying he's perfect at all, because no attorney general or politician is. But what we're saying in the light of what he did, if you're not alive, you can't be worried about being sued. If you're not alive, you can't worry about financial malfeasance. So if you're in prison or in jail disproportionately and you happen to be an ordinary citizen, those things are really incredibly important. So while, yes, get the criminals who have continued financial malfeasance in this country, but what he's done for the criminal justice system, what he's done for sentencing, what he's done for mandatory sentencing, what he's done for racial profiling, what he's done to combat police brutality, what he's done to say that the American Voting Rights Act should be protected, and his, I think, creative use of different aspects of, different sections when others were gutted by the Supreme Court has to be acknowledged. And my colleagues on the left sometimes neglect what is important to the masses and millions of people who were never under the purview, even of the white left, to be concerned about some of the issues that African-American people and Latino people and many others, religious and ethnic minorities, have been concerned about. I think in that case, he will stand tall in the history of American jurisprudence, and certainly as one of the great attorneys general of all time.
Let's turn to comments President Obama made about Eric Holder's record on counterterrorism.
He's worked side by side with our intelligence community and the Department of Homeland Security to keep us safe from terrorist attacks and to counter violent extremism. On his watch, federal courts have successfully prosecuted hundreds of terror cases, proving that the world's finest justice system is fully capable of delivering justice for the world's most wanted terrorists.
That's President Obama talking about Eric Holder. Bahar Azmi also with us, legal director of the Center for Constitutional Rights, which has been involved in a number of major national security lawsuits against the Department of Justice. Your response to his overall record and what President Obama said? Bahar?
Well, regarding the intersection of national security and civil rights, I think he's had a very troubling legacy, most fundamentally by extending and solidifying the sort of wartime architecture and narrative into our legal system. And so in some ways he's been an extension of the Bush administration's Justice Department around indefinite detention in Guantanamo, the warrantless surveillance of U.S. citizens, and in some areas has even gone farther around the targeting of journalists who seek to expose illegal federal government misconduct and the use of targeted killing practices to execute U.S. citizens without due process.
Was there an alternative?
Certainly there was an alternative. The alternative, I think, had been articulated fundamentally by President Obama, or candidate Obama, in rolling back some of the excesses and rejecting the false choice between national security and civil rights. But that alternative wasn't pursued. In fact, we sort of doubled down. And the danger, of course, is now that the sort of Bush administration practices around national security are not exceptional anymore. They have been solidified. There has been seepage and strengthening of the ties between wartime and law, and that's going to take a long time to undo.
We're going to continue with this discussion after break. Bahar Azmi with us from the Center for Constitutional Rights, Rav Weissman, president of Public Citizen, Michael Eric Dyson, professor at Georgetown University, and Leslie Prohl with the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. Stay with us.